Stop talking, just stop. You're saying too much and doing too little. You've been telling everyone about your big plans, your goals, your new routine, your new business. Your "this is the year I finally change" energy, and yet nothing actually changes. Why? Because you haven't learned to silence the noise. You haven't learned the power of executing quietly. You're too busy making noise and not busy enough making moves. Every time you speak your goals before acting on them, you're giving yourself a false sense of accomplishment. It feels like you're making progress because you're articulating it, because you're being cheered on for thinking about change, but thoughts aren't execution, talking isn't action. You don't move closer to your goals just because you said them out loud. What moves you forward is consistent, disciplined, focused effort, especially when no one's watching. It's easier to talk than to act. Talking is comfortable, action is uncomfortable, but all the growth, all the breakthrough, all the progress, it lives in that discomfort. The ones who win aren't the loudest, they're the most committed. They're the ones in the room who aren't saying a word because they're too busy doing the work. They're not tweeting about the grind, they're grinding. You've got to get obsessed with action, not with potential, not with how good the idea sounds. Obsess over the part where your feet hit the floor at 5 a.m. and you're doing the thing you promised yourself you would do. Obsess over the part where you keep going even when you're tired, bored, or not getting recognized, because that's where 99% of people quit. That's where the average tap out, but that's where you rise. Let people talk, let them post, let them pretend you're executing, you're getting up before your excuses do, you're building what other people only daydream about. You're keeping your mouth shut and your head down, because you're not here for attention, you're here for results. You're not interested in being seen as someone who's working hard. You are someone who's working hard, and that speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Do you know what gets respect? Results. Not effort, not ideas, results. You're not owed anything just because you want it bad. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants to be successful, rich, healthy, respected. But not everybody is willing to execute in silence, day after day, when nobody's clapping, when the motivation runs dry. That's where the separation happens. That's the difference between people who play around with potential and people who actually win. Silence the noise by narrowing your focus. Cut the distractions. Say no to the dinner you don't need to attend. Turn off the podcast that's just filling your head with more theory when you haven't even acted on the last 10 ideas. Do less consuming. Do more executing. There is nothing wrong with learning, but learning without implementation is just entertainment. You don't need another blueprint. You don't need another planner, another accountability group, another strategy session. You need to shut up and execute. Your future doesn't care how many vision boards you've made or how good your plan looks on paper. Your future is shaped by what you do, not what you think, and you know that already. So stop overcomplicating it. Stop trying to perfect the plan before you start. Start messy. Start now. The reason most people don't win isn't because they lack talent. It's because they don't know how to shut up and get to work. They confuse talking about goals with pursuing them. They use conversations and research and planning as a way to delay actually doing the hard stuff. And the hard stuff, that's where the growth is. So let today be the day you stop explaining and start executing. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your grind. You don't need to justify your goals or prove your work ethic through words. Let your results do the talking. You will be misunderstood. You will be underestimated. Let them think you're quiet. Let them think you're not doing much, and then let them see what happens when someone is completely committed to the work, not the hype, not the talk, just the work. You are building something greater than noise. You are building discipline. You are building momentum. You are building proof. And when the world finally sees what you've been working on, they'll be too late. Because by then, you'll already be on to the next goal. That's what happens when you shut up and execute. Discipline is what shows up when motivation doesn't, and if we're being honest, motivation is unreliable. It's emotional, fleeting, and inconsistent. It comes and goes depending on your mood, your circumstances, the weather, or whether someone liked your post. It's easy to move when you're inspired, when you're excited, when the path looks clear and the outcome looks close. But what about the days when none of that is true? What happens when you wake up and don't feel like doing what needs to be done? That's where discipline steps in. Discipline doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for a perfect mindset or the right playlist. Discipline is the decision to move anyway, to do the work anyway, to show up fully regardless of how ready or energized you feel. It's the habit of honoring your commitments after the emotion that created them has faded. We live in a culture obsessed with feeling good, with chasing motivation, with creating mood boards and curating the vibe. But none of that builds anything real. None of that makes you elite. What builds something meaningful, sustainable, and powerful is consistency, not bursts of enthusiasm, not occasional sprints of inspiration. It's the boring, daily choice to do what you said you were going to do, whether or not you're in the mood. Motivation is what gets you to buy the gym membership. Discipline is what gets you up at 5 a.m. when it's cold, when you're sore, when no one else is going. Motivation is what makes you write a to-do list. Discipline is what makes you check off every box on it, even when the tasks aren't exciting or glamorous. Motivation is the reason you start. Discipline is the reason you finish. The truth is, successful people aren't superhuman. They are not always motivated. They don't always feel like executing either, but they've trained themselves to operate beyond their feelings. They understand that greatness doesn't come from high energy days or flashes of brilliance. It comes from repeatable action, from routine, from getting it done even when it's inconvenient or painful or thankless. And you have to ask yourself, are you waiting to feel good before you act? Are you giving yourself permission to slack just because you're tired or overwhelmed or not feeling it today? Because if that's your standard, you'll be inconsistent forever. You'll live in cycles: start strong, fall off, start again, fall off again, and that cycle is the enemy of momentum. It keeps you average. It keeps you stuck. Discipline breaks that cycle. It says, this is who I am, this is what I do, no matter what. It doesn't leave room for negotiation. It builds identity, and identity is powerful. When you become the person who always keeps promises to yourself, your self-trust skyrockets, and that changes everything. That confidence doesn't come from affirmations. It comes from evidence. You build that evidence by doing the work consistently, not just when it's easy. So many people waste time chasing motivation when they should be building systems. Systems don't rely on inspiration. They rely on structure, on routine, on discipline. You shouldn't be waking up every day wondering what you feel like doing. You should be waking up and following a non-negotiable plan that aligns with your goals. Winners automate their discipline. They don't give themselves time to talk themselves out of the hard stuff. This isn't about perfection. You're not a robot. There will be days when life hits hard. But if you've built discipline, you'll keep moving forward even if you have to crawl that day. Because that's the difference between people who progress and people who plateau. One group is driven by how they feel. The other is driven by what they've committed to, and that commitment doesn't waver with their energy level. Motivation is like a spark. It gets things going. But if all you ever do is wait for sparks, you'll never sustain the fire. Discipline is the fuel. It keeps the fire burning on the days when no one's cheering, when no one's noticing, when the results are taking longer than expected. Discipline keeps you alive in the game long enough to actually win. So stop relying on motivation. Stop chasing hype. Start building the muscle of discipline, because that's what changes your life. That's what builds the body, the business, the mindset, the momentum. That's what sets you apart from the majority, because most people are waiting to feel like it. You're getting it done regardless. That's what makes you dangerous. That's what makes you unstoppable. Ideas are cheap. Execution is everything. Everyone has ideas: the person next to you in traffic, the barista making your coffee, the coworker who keeps saying one day. The world is full of people sitting on incredible dreams, billion-dollar plans, massive potential, and yet they're still in the same place, having the same conversations year after year. Why? Because they never execute. You don't get credit for what's in your head. You only get credit for what you ship, what you launch, what you do. There are no rewards for good intentions. There's no applause for almost. The marketplace doesn't care how passionate you are. It responds to performance. What you produce is what moves the needle. You're not lacking more strategy. You're not missing some secret ingredient. You're not stuck because you don't know enough. You're stuck because you haven't taken enough action. Period. Too many people are addicted to planning. They think strategy sessions and brainstorming meetings are progress, but none of that matters without action. Execution is the bridge between potential and results. Let's be clear, strategy does have a place. You don't just run blindly toward a goal without a plan, but most people are over-strategizing and underperforming. They're obsessing over perfect timing, perfect branding, perfect systems when they should be doing the imperfect thing right now. You learn by doing, you get clarity through action, but instead, people get paralyzed trying to build the perfect map before they take the first step. You can't think your way into success. You can't manifest your way into momentum. You've got to move. You've got to execute, especially when you don't feel ready, especially when it's messy, especially when it's scary. Action is the antidote to fear. The more you move, the less space you give doubt to grow. You want to know who wins, the person who executes faster, not the smartest, not the most talented, not the one with the most followers, the one who can get an idea, act on it, ship it, get feedback, improve it, and do it again on repeat. That's the person who wins. That's the person who becomes unstoppable. You don't need to know how the entire staircase is built. Just take the next step. Want to start a business? Launch the first offer. Want to write a book? Start writing 500 words a day. Want to grow your brand? Post your first video today, not when you have better lighting, a better mic, or more confidence. You get better by doing. Execution is the training ground. It's where you grow. It's how you evolve. It's the only way to win. And here's the truth. Execution is boring. It's repetitive. It's not sexy. Everyone wants the thrill of the idea, but few are willing to live in the grind of the execution. But that grind, that's where the magic happens. That's where you build the habits, the discipline, the resilience that separates high performers from everyone else. That's where you stop being a dreamer and start becoming a doer. People don't fail because they didn't have a good plan. They fail because they didn't follow through. Or worse, they never started. They waited for confidence. They waited for clarity. They waited for permission. But clarity comes from doing. Confidence comes from keeping promises to yourself, from taking action, from proving that you can. Nobody is going to hand you the perfect strategy. Nobody is going to execute for you. And nobody is going to care more than you, so stop asking for the shortcut. Stop obsessing over the newest tactic. Stop collecting more information. You already know what to do. You've known for a while. You're just not doing it, and that's the hard truth. The gap between where you are and where you want to be, that's the execution gap. That's the only thing holding you back. Decide, move, adjust later. Stop aiming for perfect. Start aiming for done. Execute fast. Learn fast. Fail fast. The people who win aren't perfect, they're just relentless. They're the ones who take action when others hesitate. They're the ones who finish what they start. They don't talk about it, they do it, and they do it again tomorrow. Execution is what builds real momentum, and once you build momentum, you become dangerous because momentum compounds. One action leads to another, one post leads to more engagement, one conversation leads to a new opportunity, but none of that happens unless you move first. The opportunity is on the other side of action. So ask yourself, what's the thing you've been talking about for months? What's the goal you keep planning around, but not moving toward? What's the action you keep putting off? You already have your answer. You don't need more time. You don't need more ideas. You need to execute, because in the end, execution is the only strategy that matters. Ideas are everywhere. Everyone has them. You've had them in the shower, in the car, in the middle of the night. You've written them down, shared them with friends, maybe even sketched out the beginnings of a plan. But let's be honest, what did you do with most of them? Nothing, because most people stop at the idea. They get a little hit of dopamine from the vision. They feel good about the potential, and then they go right back to doing what's comfortable. The truth, ideas are cheap. Execution is what separates the talkers from the builders, the dreamers from the doers, the average from the elite. Execution is the only strategy that matters because it's the only thing that delivers results. You can read all the books, take all the courses, listen to every podcast, and hire the best mentors, but if you don't do anything with it, it's just noise. Too many people confuse learning with progress. They consume content all day long, telling themselves they're preparing or researching, but really, they're procrastinating. Preparation becomes a delay tactic. It becomes a socially acceptable form of self-sabotage. Everyone wants to feel smart. Everyone wants to feel like they've got a great plan, but planning without action is the fastest way to stay stuck. The marketplace doesn't care about your potential. Your audience doesn't care how brilliant your idea is. Your future doesn't care how well you mapped out the perfect 90-day strategy if you never took the first step. People spend months, sometimes years, obsessing over the perfect way to start, the perfect time to launch, the perfect system, when what they need is to start messy and move forward relentlessly. Execution is not glamorous. It's not flashy, it's repetitive, it's boring. It looks like doing the same thing every day when no one is watching. It's getting up early to work on your business before your day job. It's making 50 sales calls even though your last 49 were ignored. It's recording the video even when you're tired. It's showing up to train when your body is sore and your mind is drained. Execution demands consistency, and most people don't want that. They want excitement. They want fast results. They want the win without the work. But the people who rise to the top, the ones you admire, they aren't just the smartest or most talented. They are the most disciplined. They understand that execution is a habit, not a one-time sprint. They know that done is better than perfect, and that the compound effect of small, consistent actions will always outperform the person waiting for inspiration to strike. They don't sit around hoping for motivation. They build systems that make execution non-negotiable. It's not a question of if they'll show up. It's just a matter of how fast they'll improve because they keep showing up. When you execute, you gain feedback. You start learning what works and what doesn't. You make progress. You build confidence through evidence. Confidence doesn't come from hype. It comes from knowing you did what you said you would do. That kind of internal proof is powerful. It's not rooted in emotion. It's rooted in action. That's the kind of momentum that becomes unstoppable. And let's not forget speed matters, not reckless, thoughtless action, but swift execution. Most people are moving way too slow. They overthink everything. They question themselves. They ask 10 people for advice. And by the time they finally take action, the moment has passed. The ones who win are the ones who execute quickly, learn from it, and move again. They don't wait for certainty. They create it by acting. You have to stop trying to build the perfect plan and start building you. Build the version of you who gets it done, the one who doesn't need a round of applause or the right mood. The one who executes when it's hard, when it's boring, when it's uncomfortable, because that's what it takes. People are out here trying to build $1,000,000 ideas with $10 discipline. It doesn't work that way. Execution is the price of entry. There's no shortcut. You either put in the reps or you don't. You either follow through or you stay where you are. You either execute or you make excuses. Every day you're choosing. Every hour you're deciding whether you want comfort or whether you want growth. Because growth doesn't come from more thinking. It comes from more doing. So if you're sitting on an idea right now, something you've been thinking about, planning around, dreaming about, ask yourself, why haven't you moved on it? What's really stopping you? Because chances are it's not a lack of knowledge. It's not a lack of opportunity. It's a lack of execution. And until you change that, nothing else changes. You don't need to be perfect. You need to move. You need to act. You need to stop overcomplicating and start delivering. Execution is the only strategy that produces results. Everything else is just noise. Consistency isn't exciting. It's not sexy. It doesn't give you instant gratification or viral moments, but it's the most powerful force behind every great achievement you admire. Because the truth is, anyone can show up once. Anyone can have a great day, a motivated week, or a strong start. But what separates the average from the elite, the dreamers from the doers, the talkers from the builders, is the ability to show up again and again and again, regardless of the mood, the noise, or the outcome. Getting obsessed with consistency is a mindset shift. It's about understanding that greatness isn't built in bursts, it's built in layers. And those layers are laid down day by day, brick by brick, rep by rep. It's about falling in love with the process, not the praise. Because if you only show up when you feel like it, you will never get anywhere worth going. The key isn't doing more when you're motivated, it's doing the minimum when you're not. That's what moves the needle, that's what compounds, that's what turns potential into progress. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. They want transformation in 30 days. They want rewards without routine, but it doesn't work that way. Real results, the kind that stick, the kind that change your life, don't come from intensity. They come from consistency. One workout doesn't change your body. One healthy meal doesn't change your lifestyle. One post doesn't grow your brand, but doing it again and again, that changes everything. Consistency is what builds momentum, and momentum is a force multiplier. Once you get going, staying in motion becomes easier, but you don't get momentum without first pushing through the resistance of inconsistency. You don't get to ride the wave until you've shown up enough to build it. And that requires grit. It requires you to stop negotiating with yourself, to stop asking, do I feel like it, and start saying, this is just what I do. You have to become the person who follows through, not sometimes, not when it's convenient, but every time. That's identity level change. That's when consistency isn't something you try to do, it's something you are. It's no longer optional. It's embedded into your standards. And the moment you raise your standard for consistency is the moment everything begins to shift. Your confidence grows because you trust yourself. Your results grow because your actions compound. Your influence grows because people see that you're reliable, dependable, and consistent in a world full of people who aren't. The truth is, the world doesn't need more talented people. It needs more consistent people. Talent is overrated when it isn't paired with execution. There are countless gifted individuals who never get anywhere because they don't show up consistently. And there are average people outworking them, outlasting them, and outranking them because they committed to doing the work every single day, whether it's exciting or not. Consistency is also what earns you trust. Whether it's in leadership, business, relationships, or personal development, trust is built through patterns, and patterns are formed through repetition. Nobody trusts someone who shows up strong once and disappears for weeks. But show up consistently and you become credible, you become respected, you become undeniable. That's the power of consistency. It earns you things that motivation never could, but you have to be okay with the quiet seasons. With the days when it feels like it's not working. With the stretches where you're doing all the right things and seeing none of the results. That's where most people quit. That's where the average gives up. But that's where you have to lean in, because consistency isn't about immediate payoff, it's about delayed gratification. You're playing the long game, and the long game always wins. You don't need to be the most talented. You don't need to have the best plan. You just need to do the work over and over, long after the excitement is gone. That's what makes you dangerous. That's what makes you unstoppable, not motivation. Not hype, but relentless, boring, powerful, disciplined consistency. So get obsessed with it. Make it your superpower. Let other people chase shiny objects. Let them start and stop, fizzle out, fall off. You're showing up every day, no matter what. And that's why, in the end, you'll be the one who wins. You don't deserve praise until you've produced. That might sound harsh, but it's the truth most people need to hear. We're living in a world that hands out applause too early, celebrates potential too loudly, and gives validation before there's even anything to validate. People want recognition for trying, for dreaming, for planning, but effort alone doesn't create value. Execution does. Results do. Progress you can measure and outcomes you can repeat. That's what earns praise. Not the intention to get started, but the proof that you followed through. There's a dangerous culture of celebrating the start. Someone announces they're writing a book, launching a business, starting a fitness journey, and they're flooded with likes and supportive comments. That dopamine hit from early praise can become addictive. But here's the catch. If you let the validation of the announcement replace the discipline required for the work, you're done before you've even begun. Praise can become a trap if you haven't produced anything yet. You start chasing recognition instead of chasing results. And that creates a cycle where you talk more than you execute and nothing meaningful ever gets built. You have to earn it. You have to put in the reps. You have to show up when no one's watching, when no one's clapping, when no one's checking on you, and do the work anyway. That's where real self-respect comes from, not from others praising you, but from knowing you kept the promise you made to yourself. That you pushed through resistance, stayed consistent, and built something real. Praise hits different when it comes after you've delivered, when it's a reflection of your results, not just your ambition. It's not about being anti-support or refusing to acknowledge people's efforts. It's about raising the standard for what we celebrate. It's about pushing ourselves and others to stop getting comfortable with almost, to stop being content with potential, because potential without production is wasted. It's energy that never went anywhere. It's momentum that died in planning, and the brutal truth is that the world rewards the finishers. And not the starters, not the ones who almost made it, the ones who shipped, the ones who produced, the ones who followed through when it was hard, inconvenient, and boring. The reason praise doesn't feel fulfilling when you haven't earned it is because deep down you know. You know when you've really put in the work and when you haven't. You know when you're showing up fully and when you're phoning it in. No amount of applause can drown out the voice inside you that says, you didn't really do it yet. And that internal dissonance is why people get stuck, because they're chasing external praise to feel better about internal inconsistency. But it doesn't work. Only action closes that gap. If you want real praise, the kind that actually means something, that sticks, that reflects your growth, go produce something, build it, ship it, finish it, then let the results speak. Let the work be loud. Let your output be the evidence. When people see the consistency, the execution, the actual product, that's when the praise means something. That's when it becomes a reflection of truth, not just encouragement. Stop asking to be recognized before the work is done. Stop hoping someone will validate your vision before you've proven you can carry it. It's not about being perfect, it's about showing that you're serious. That you're not just in love with the idea of success, but committed to the cost of it, because producing takes something from you. It requires energy, focus, discipline, and sacrifice. And if you're not willing to give those things consistently, why should you be praised? Praise is a byproduct. It's not the goal, and if you make it the goal, you'll always fall short because you're chasing the result before earning the process. You'll cut corners, you'll look for shortcuts. You'll start faking effort because you're addicted to approval, but real producers, they don't chase praise, they chase mastery, they chase progress, they chase that next level of output that pushes them into new territory. They're not waiting for applause, they're busy building something worth clapping for. So the next time you feel underappreciated, ask yourself, have I produced enough to be praised? Have I delivered something real? Have I shown the discipline, the effort, and the commitment it takes to stand out not in theory, but in execution? If the answer is no, then good. That's your wake-up call. That's your reminder to get to work. To stop seeking praise and start creating value. Because when you've really done the work, when the result is undeniable, when the output is consistent, when the impact is measurable, you won't need to ask for praise. It will come quietly, powerfully, and without you needing to justify it, because people respect producers, not planners, not dreamers, not people with potential. The world respects the ones who deliver. Every time.